Hi students, warm greetings of the day. Once again I am back with another video clip on His First Flight, a beautiful story written by Liam O'Flaherty, a very famous Irish novelist and short story writer. In the last session we discussed the first three paragraphs in the story. The first three paragraphs speak about a young seagull and his family, the nervousness that he experienced before taking his first flight. We also came across the importance of self-confidence, the importance of self-reliance, and also the support that we need from our parents to accomplish, to materialize our dreams. The young seagull was very nervous. Even though he had larger wings than his siblings, even though he had more powerful wings than his siblings, he didn't have any faith in his wings, and as a result he was unable to take his first flight. So these three paragraphs speak about the importance of self-confidence. The young seagull didn't have any faith in his abilities, any trust in his potential. Those paragraphs also speak about the importance of self-reliance, and they also speak about the importance of being involved in our family. They also speak about the support that we need from our parents to become successful in our lives. Now I am going to discuss some other paragraphs in the story His First Flight by Liam O'Flaherty. Just listen to the reading of the next paragraph. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing warmly on his ledge that faced the south. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. Then he had found a dried piece of mackerel's tail at the far end of his ledge. Now there was not a single scrap of food left. He had searched every inch, rooting among the rough, dirt-caked straw nest where he and his brothers and sister had been hatched. He even gnawed at the dried pieces of eggshell. It was like eating a part of himself. The sun was now ascending. The meaning of the word ascending is climbing up. The sun was climbing up, and it was blazing warmly on the ledge that faced the south. It was blazing warmly means it was shining intensely, and the young seagull felt the heat. He felt the heat because of a particular reason. He was so tired and he was hungry because he had been starving on the ledge since the previous nightfall. Then he had found a dried piece of mackerel's tail at the far end of his ledge. After that, there was no scrap of food left on the ledge. He had been starving there since the previous nightfall. He was trying hard to find out a fragment of food on the ledge. He started to root even that dirt-caked nest from where he and his siblings had been hatched. He started rooting the dried and dirt-caked nest. What do you mean by the expression root? Root here means to dig up with a snout or to dig up with the beak. He started digging up the dried nest, the dirt-caked nest, with his bill. Dirt-caked. What do you mean by the expression dirt-caked? Dirt-caked means covered by dirt. The nest was covered by dirt. He even tried to bite. No, the expression used in the text is gnaw, G-N-A-W. He even tried to gnaw the eggshells from where he and his siblings had been hatched, and there is an expression in the text, it was like eating a part of himself. that means the eggshells had been a part of this young seagull because they had been hatched out from these eggshells. So it was like eating a part of himself. This paragraph clearly speaks about the pathetic situation of the young seagull which was alone on the ledge. Now I am going to read out the next two paragraphs in the story, His First Flight by Liam O'Flaherty. Just listen to this reading. He then trotted back and forth from one end of the ledge to the other, his long grey legs stepping daintily, trying to find some means of reaching his parents without having to fly. But on each side of him, the ledge ended in a sheer fall of precipice with the sea beneath, and between him and his parents there was a deep white crack. Surely he could reach them without flying if he could only move northwards along the cliff face. But then on what could he walk? There was no ledge and he was not a fly. And above him he could see nothing. The precipice was sheer and the top of it was perhaps farther away than the sea beneath him. He then trotted back and forth from one part of the ledge to the other, from one side of the ledge to the other. He then trotted back and forth. What do you mean by the expression trot? Trot means to run at a moderate pace. So he ran at a moderate pace from one end of the ledge to the other. He wanted to reach his parents. At the same time, he didn't have the courage to take his first flight. He could have reached his parents if he had the ledge extended to the other cliff where his parents and siblings were staying. But unfortunately, there was a wide crack between him and his parents, and he was unable to take his first flight. He was not courageous enough to take his first flight. If he had taken his first flight, he could have easily reached his parents. But unfortunately, he didn't have the courage to take that first flight. Unfortunately, he found the precipice, the steep rock, so sheer. The expression used in the text is sheer, which means so steep. He found the cliff so steep, and as a result, he lost his courage and was unable to take his first flight. Now I move on to the next paragraph. He stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge, and standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. Still, they took no notice of him. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau dozing, with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back, only his mother was looking at him. He stepped slowly on to the brink of the ledge, on the edge of the ledge, and he stood there on one leg and the other leg hidden under his wing. He closed one eye, then the other eye. He pretended to be falling asleep, but no one noticed him. His siblings were dozing on the plateau on the other cliff, with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back. What do you mean by the expression preen? Preen means to clean, especially with the bill or beak of a bird. He was cleaning his white back with his bill or beak. The only member of the family that noticed the pathetic situation of the young seagull was the mother. This sentence clearly speaks about motherly affection. Mother is the only person who knows the agony of her children. Mother is the only person who knows the difficult moments of her children, the misery of her children. So that particular sentence clearly speaks about motherly affection. She was the only member in the family who noticed the sad plight of the young seagull who was alone on the ledge. Now I move on to the next paragraph. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. Now and again she tore at a piece of fish that lay at her feet, and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. He uttered a low cackle. His mother cackled too and looked at him. The mother was standing on a little hump on the plateau. She was tearing apart a fish that was under her feet, and occasionally she scraped her beak on the rock. Here the young seagull thought, he also loved to tear fish like that. He was maddened by hunger. He was maddened at the sight of the fish which was under the feet of his mother. He used to love tearing the fish in that way and scraping his beak on the rocks to wet it. So the birds scrape their beak on the rock for two specific reasons. The first one, to clean the beak, and the second one, the most important one, to wet the beak. The spelling of the word wet here is W-H-E-T. Wet means to sharpen the beak. So birds scrape their beaks against the rocks on the rock in order to wet their beaks, in order to sharpen their beaks. Most of the students are familiar with that expression whetstone, something that you can find in the kitchen, which is generally used by our mothers to sharpen the knives. Whetstone. He uttered a low cackle. He uttered a low sound, and his mother too uttered a cackle. It clearly indicates that the mother was closely watching the young seagull. The mother was keeping close tabs on her young son. Now I move on to the next paragraph. Gha, 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 he cried, begging her to bring him over some food. Golo, she screamed back mockingly, but he kept calling plaintively, and after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. But when she was just opposite to him, abreast of the ledge, she halted, her legs hanging limp, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. The young seagull cried, gha, gha, gha. The young seagull begged for some food, but the mother seagull, she screamed back mockingly, in a mocking manner, in a teasing way. She teased her son, who was not courageous enough, who was afraid to take his first flight. But the young seagull continued to cry, continued to beg for food in a plaintive voice, in a sorrowful voice, in a sad voice. Then suddenly he uttered a joyful scream. What was the reason for that joyful scream? He found his mother taking a piece of fish and flying towards him. The young seagull was very happy. He thought that the mother was flying towards him to give that piece of food. But when she reached just above the young seagull, she halted, her legs hanging limp, her legs hanging loosely, and she stayed there just above the young seagull with that piece of fish in her beak, but it was out of his reach. So she halted there. She did not give that piece of fish directly to the young seagull. Instead of that, she halted there. She kept that piece of fish in her beak just out of his reach. She kept that piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of the young seagull. So, in the next session, we will discuss the remaining paragraphs in the story, His First Flight. We will discuss how the parents goaded the young seagull to take his first flight. We will discuss whether the young seagull was successful or not, etc. in the next session. That's all for the day. Thank you.